Welcome to EPG Patashala. My name is Dugirala Vasanta. I am on the teaching faculty of Department of Linguistics, Usmania University, Hyderabad. I have developed the course Psychoneurolinguistics, and today's lecture is on language awareness, which is module number 12. In this lecture, I will try to concentrate on 3 points. I'll try to explain that metalinguistic awareness is part of language awareness. The concept of metalinguistic awareness, we will spend some time discussing it. Then, how does metalinguistic awareness emerge in children and how do we assess it? And finally, about the connection between metalinguistic awareness, literacy and bilingualism. Since most of us are bilingual, what is the connection between metalinguistic awareness and bilingualism, and how does literacy influences our metalinguistic awareness? So these are the 3 main points I'll be talking today. Communication between 2 people or groups or whatever, most of the time we think about communication as being speaking and understanding. I speak, you listen, and these are the 2 things we focus on. Our knowledge of language is much more than production and comprehension. We consciously reflect on the structure and function of linguistic units. We treat language as though it's an object. You might ask me, when do we do that? We do that, one good example is translation. Suppose you are asked to translate from English to Hindi or Hindi to Telugu or whatever. If you are a bilingual and you have to translate, you are forcing yourself to think of that word, think of the other language, target language, source language, you go one to other, you focus your attention, you suddenly take the word out and reflect on it. So metalinguistic awareness is one aspect of language awareness, and it is being aware of linguistic structure and function of that structure. Metalinguistic ability is conscious analysis and reflection on linguistic forms used in communication. I mean, you know that we communicate by using linguistic forms. But when we start focusing not on the content of what we want to say, but on the form, then you're engaged in metalinguistic function. It develops gradually as children grow from 2 years to 10 years or whatever. Children produce rhymes very early. They sometimes make self-corrections. Sometimes they correct others. They standing next to parents, they say, you made a mistake, and they correct it. They suddenly, they're able to focus on the form. They play language games. They start asking questions about language. What do we say that in our language? I heard this in, like that. They define terms a little later. They detect ambiguity. These are all instances of metalinguistic ability. Of course, translation is the highest form of metalinguistic ability. But generating a rhyme or detecting a rhyme is also metalinguistic ability. So in other words, metalinguistic ability is a continuum. Young children generate rhymes and they ask questions, they correct you, they play language games. But at the other end of the continuum, a good translator is engaged in metalinguistic ability. It's a continuum. The point I would like to stress in today's lecture is that metalinguistic ability also, like all other things that I have been saying, draws on our general cognitive ability. It's not just arbitrary symbols. It draws on our memory, attention, problem solving, metacognition. Alright? So, a whole lot of cognitive abilities influence metalinguistic awareness or knowledge or whatever. We acquire metalinguistic ability after we acquire primary skills of speaking and understanding. That's why metalinguistic language awareness or metalinguistic ability is considered as language after 5. In other words, much of the metalinguistic ability we develop is after the age of 5. Of course, you may think I'm contradicting myself. Some of the rhymes children produce or self-corrections or language games may happen before 5, But serious metalinguistic ability develops after you go to school. So they've tried to, researchers have tried to offer some models about how metalinguistic ability develops. You know that we have talked about sounds in words in the other module. We know we develop sounds, we learn to put those sounds together and make up words. We produce those words, we understand other people's words. So speaking and understanding are primary abilities and they come by the time we are 3. But after that, how does from speaking and understanding we go on to this question of reflecting on words, making language an object and reflect on language? How do we move? So there are 1 or 2 models. Let's go through those models. Carmela Smith's model, she says there are 4 levels we go through. At the first level, the knowledge is completely implicit. A 2-year-old cannot explain what he or she knows about his language. It's only about production and comprehension. They produce, they understand, but they cannot talk about it. E1 level, that is explicit level, primary explicit knowledge it is called. Here, knowledge is accessible for conscious analysis. And then at the next secondary explicit level, it not only it is available for conscious analysis, but we are able to verbalize that. And at the E3 level, that is a tertiary explicit knowledge, it is available to conscious analysis and can be verbalized very well. You know, it is much more advanced than E2 level, right? So, according to this model, metalinguistic ability occurs at E2 and E3 levels. First 2 levels are not metalinguistic. They are just basically about learning to produce and understand speech and language. But at E2 and E3 levels, the representations we have developed and stored in our mental lexicon get redescribed. That is, they get transformed. It is that transformation that is required in order to engage in metalinguistic ability or language awareness. When this redescription takes place, language becomes much more automatic. So, we speak much more, the past speech is very, very clearly we can say it. Young children, 2 and 3-year-old children will articulate it much more slow. It hasn't become automatic. But there are other researchers who argued the need to distinguish implicit knowledge about language from being able to make explicit judgment about forms and the role of literacy in doing this. And therefore, there is another model we have to engage with, which is Gombert 1992. He used a concept called epilinguistic control. According to this model, at the first stage, we just acquire the first language, native language skills, linguistic forms and pragmatic context. We are able to, even a 2-year-old child is able to remember a particular word uttered in a particular occasion, whether when they went to a beach or a zoo or some play school or whatever, they'll remember a word and that context and utter it correctly in that context next time. So we can remember the context and the word and just use that at phase 1. At the next level, we gain what he calls epilinguistic control. That is internal reorganization of that linguistic. What you have stored at level 1 gets reorganized. It gets reorganized, but the child is not able to talk about it. But at phase 3, you develop metalinguistic awareness. In other words, the child is consciously able to talk about those elements that have been stored, which got reorganized or redescribed at phase 3. Phase 4, the whole thing becomes more automatic, automatization of meta processes. Reduction in cognitive load is achieved by automatic aspects of this processing. So basically, these 2 models are not very different. Carmela-Smith and Gombert's models, the language is slightly different, but they are trying to say the last 2 stages talk about language awareness, which is very explicit. First 2 stages are about speaking and understanding, primary skills. The last 2 are secondary skills. So what drives this change from primary skills of speaking and understanding to reflecting on forms and functions of what we are speaking. What drives this change? One can say one main factor is literacy instruction. What happens to you when you go to school? In other countries, at the age of 5 or 6, they put a child in a school. In our country, we are sending children very early, 2.5, 3, they are going to school. Once you go to school, suddenly child starts seeing words on the blackboard. Teacher writes a word and teacher says, what can we do? What can occur next to it? Or how do you divide it, segment it? So, making language as an object for reflection becomes possible once you go to school. So, literacy instruction, literacy practices, or even availability of lot of children's books at home and parents reading to you at bedtime. These are practices which are not there in all communities all over the world. But if the child has access to lots of books, even if he can't read, he remembers the picture and its name. So it's called print literacy. So literacy makes you become more aware of language. So this whole today's lecture is about language awareness, and I'm saying it begins very early. I don't know if you have paid attention to very small children remembering some cereal boxes. They remember the picture on the box and they'll say, I want Kellogg's. They're not reading Kellogg's, or they're not reading the name of the cereal. They remember the picture. So that it starts like that. Awareness starts at print literacy or emergent literacy, and slowly it develops as they go to school. And learning to read and write is what basically contributes to language awareness. So does this mean then illiterate people don't have language awareness? It's a very legitimate question and you have to think about it. It's very important, and it is, one need not say that illiterates don't have language awareness and it's a deficiency. It is not. Their way of processing information is very different. It is true that literacy enhances metalinguistic awareness, but lack of literacy is not going to kill you, So, they've done some experiments with literates and illiterate people. They said, they've done some experiments with literates and illiterate people. They said, this is basically, syllogism, logic, it comes under logic. Suppose a group of literate and illiterate people are asked to listen to these sentences. You listen carefully. All stones on the moon are blue. A man goes to the moon and finds a stone. What color is the stone? I believe in experiments like this, the only literate people who have some knowledge said blue, of course. Okay, they are able to use their deductive reasoning and said blue. But the illiterate people did not agree with this. They questioned the very premise. How is the man going to, how do we know what he saw it, or something like that. The way of reasoning is slightly different, alright. And of course, this kind of differences are much more if we give them a words, you speak a word and ask them, remove the first sound in it or the middle sound in it, it will be very difficult for illiterate people. For literate people, we are able to objectify that. We say cat, first sound is ka, so at, or kite, you remove ta, kai, or whatever. We are able to imagine that word, we are able to remove a segment, pronounce the rest of it. Segmentation ability. There are differences between literate and illiterate speakers. So basically, literacy and metalinguistic awareness, what is the relationship? For most illiterate, semi-literate people, language is basically meant for communication. It's a referential system meant for oral communication. It is not an object for analysis. For illiterates and semi-literates, language is not meant for analysis. It is meant for communication, right? Ability to make word boundaries in speech requires knowledge of written form of language, right? Word is not a default unit of sentence. We take it for granted. If I say what is a sentence, you say group of words. But for somebody who is not educated, who has never written sentences, word is not a default unit. Alright? Segmenting a sentence into words is not as easy as you think it is. Right? Literacy, therefore, is one of the determining factor of metalinguistic awareness. Researchers use the terms somewhat differently. So, some people make a distinction between metalinguistic knowledge, which is about knowledge about abstract principles of language. Say earlier, when you go through this course, because you are a student of linguistics, you know English has SVO word order, or Telugu has SVO word order, verb final, which language is verb final, which language is verb initial. So some abstract principles about language you know. So that knowledge you already have. Okay, but being metalinguistically aware is not that abstract knowledge. Focusing attention on a specific domain or specific properties of linguistic units. So that caterpillar, the part of it, cat, can be removed from caterpillar. It's not that, that it can be divided into two different words with two different meanings. Cat is different, caterpillar is different, even though CAT appears in cat or whatever it is. Thinking about or even saying that cat is shorter than caterpillar because caterpillar has more number of syllables in it. Counting syllables of a word is metalinguistic ability. You don't do this in everyday, when you are using language, you don't count number of syllables in. But if I say Kamala, how many syllables are there? Kamala. You know it intuitively, you know that there are 3 syllables. So being able to identify the units within a word or reflect on that and shift it or remove one. If I say there is a Telugu word called Senagalu, you take out sa, Nagalu. Is that a word? Yes, it's a Nagalu is an acceptable word. So I can play games with you saying that remove one syllable, it should still become a meaningful word. You can do it if you are illiterate. Right? So that is engaging in metalinguistic ability, thinking about the units which make up the word, substituting with another unit and still make it meaningful. All this is metalinguistic ability. That is capacity to use knowledge about language. Yes, all of us are born with knowledge about our language, but capacity to use that knowledge is metalinguistic ability. So in other words, if you are saying if somebody is very proficient user of language, that person, you see the picture on the screen, it's not enough to be a competence, linguistic competence, knowledge about grammatical rules of your language. You have competence about that, automatically it is given to you, maybe you are born with it or whatever, right? Your competence, that's the first circle in the figure. Ability to use is the metalinguistic ability that I am trying to focus on in this unit, which is what determines the performance, the third circle. Your proficiency is based on your performance, that performance is based on your ability to use is based on your knowledge. So there are 3 circles which connect with each other. They do talk about different types of metalinguistic awareness. The one which has been researched maximally upon is phonological awareness. Phonological awareness, by now we should be able to guess, it is about awareness about sounds. Awareness about sounds and sound sequences. So, deleting segments, blending segments, creating rhymes are all examples of metalinguistic awareness. Whereas morphological awareness is awareness about words, not sounds, next level. After you go through sounds and sound sequences, go to words, word order, compound words. If I say schoolboy, is it one, can you divide that into 2 words? Or defining words. I ask you, give you a word and say, what does it mean? Define it for me. All that is about morphological awareness. Thinking about it and then defining it is morphological awareness. Syntactic awareness, judgment about word order, grammaticality, acceptability, correcting sentences, ungrammatical sentences, detecting ambiguity, all these is syntactic awareness. So, phonological awareness, morphological awareness, syntactic awareness are three main examples of metalinguistic awareness. You can talk about pragmatic awareness, discourse awareness and all that, but let's just take up these in a slightly more detail. Phonological awareness, look at the table on the screen. The task you can give a child, somebody you are trying to test metalinguistic ability, how it is developed in a particular child. If you want to test phonological awareness, the task you give it is mentioned on the left side, and what the description of the task is given on the right side. So you can ask the child, give me a rhyme. What you do is you say, okay, I'm going to say fish. Now give me a rhyme. What would you do? Fish rhymes with, think about the rhyming word with fish, dish, right? You can say dish. So you check whether the child can do that or not. It is generating a rhyme. Or you give two words which are rhyming and say, do these two words rhyme or don't rhyme, right? That is also phonological awareness. Strip the initial consonant. You say, what is left when you remove first sound from the word task? T-A-S-K. Remove the first sound. You take away T, you are left with ask. Correct. It's a word in English, but that's a task with which you can test phonological awareness. Identify different initial sound. You say bag, 9, beach, bike. Which one doesn't belong? 3 words are starting with ba. Only one word is starting with na. So 9 is out. Ask the child to cut off 9. That doesn't belong, because all the other words are starting with ba. They have to pay attention and realize that that's the common thing about it. Identify different final sound. You give rat, dime, boat, mit. Which one doesn't belong? So here you have t in rat, you have t in boat, you have t in mit. So they all belong. So dime is the word out. Delete a sound and say the rest. You say slip and you tell the child, please say slip without la. The child has to say sip. The child has to remember slip, take out la, say sip. So these are the ways you test phonological awareness. All the examples I gave you are from English. So you should be asking me, is there language specificity to phonological awareness? Of course, there is. Phonological awareness, in many Indian languages, we don't remove the consonant and the vowel. Many Indian languages, we say ka, we only write ka. We don't write k plus a, right? So you can't ask a child to remove a from ka. It doesn't work like that. So in most Indian languages, the minimal unit we write is a syllable. We call it akshara. Our languages are called akshara languages, right? Therefore, in our language, phonological awareness is not phoneme awareness. In English, it is phoneme awareness. In English, you have to know the phoneme, ka, sa, pa, whatever. All the consonant you should know, vowel you should know. Vowel phonemes and consonant phonemes, how aware you are determines phonemic awareness, tells you about the phonological awareness in English, but in Indian languages, many of the Indian languages, you need to know more about akshara, where you combine consonants and vowels, right? So phonological awareness, unfortunately, many reading models are developed based on English, and therefore they give a lot of importance to letters and phonemes. Alright, let's look at, before we go into models of reading, let's talk about morphological awareness. Morphological awareness is about being aware of the way inflectional and derivational morphemes function in English. So suppose I give you an analogy test. I say push is to pushed in past tense, Lose is to, what is your answer? Should be lost. Lose, lost, right? Past tense. So I am asking you to pay attention to the first pair and see what I am doing morphologically. Repeat that for the next one. Let's try one more. High is to height, deep is to depth. Answer is depth. So again, for morphologically rich Indian languages, we have to come up with some other. Our language's morphology is not exactly like this. It's very rich. So we have to think of, there aren't that many tasks available in relation to English in Indian languages, and that's the point I'm trying to stress. We need to develop tasks which are specific to our languages. A couple more on morphological awareness. Suppose we say create new words by adding beginning sound. So if I'll only give you 80 and I will say I will make one word. If I add B, it becomes bat. Now make some more words. All of them should begin with B. So you take B and you add what? I've added 80, but you add something else. Ban, bang. We will see how they are able to make up words. Do cup and kite begin with the same sound? Here you need to know that even though English cup is spelled with C, the sound is ka. So it's partly phonological awareness, but partly they need to know that cup and kite, they share the same sound. Circle the word that doesn't belong. Weed, bead, pill, seed. So here again, they have to draw on phonological awareness also and see which one doesn't belong and take out pill, because bead, seed, they all have something common at word level. Split these words into two. Football, himself, underneath, playground. You write it together, ask the child to make it into two and see how they'll split. Count the number of words in this sentence. Give any sentence, ask them to draw a line after each word and see how many words they identify in a sentence. So, okay, with English it might work like that, but if you take Chinese, morphological awareness in Chinese is very different from morphological awareness in English, because Chinese have a lot of homophones. From your semantics class, you would have learned what a homophone is. Homophones are words that are pronounced alike, but they carry different meanings. So, Chinese researchers, psycholinguistic researchers from China, they developed a task called odd word out and studied young children's ability to identify two-syllable words that did not belong from among 4 alternatives provided. Every child is given 4 words. They have to take out 2 words which don't belong to that. Okay? And you have to remember all 4 are homophones. They sound alike, but their meanings are different. This task reportedly predicted those children who did well on this task. I believe they are able to recognize words in printed words much better, much faster, earlier than those children who failed on this task. So the Chinese researchers who did this research said that this particular task, which uses homophones, is much more taxing in terms of processing. You have to, even though they all sound alike, you have to get their meanings before you can perform on this task. And that, so homophone, odd word out using homophones is something that predicts reading success in Chinese, but the English tests that are already available may not be able to predict reading success in Chinese. Okay. In other words, the point I am stressing is that you need to develop language specific tests of metalinguistic ability at different levels. Let's move on to syntactic awareness. This is about how much we know about the grammaticality of a sentence. If somebody shows you a sentence and say, is this acceptable? Do you think this is grammatical or ungrammatical? being able to judge that is syntactic awareness. So your ability to know that even though phonologically they are very similar words like instrumental and instrumentalist, how to use these words in a sentence is syntactic awareness. Also things like word order correction. If I give you a sentence with jumbled order and ask you to quickly put them properly so that it becomes a grammatical sentence, how long you take to make a grammatical sentence out of a jumbled sentence is your awareness. I may give you a wrong sentence and say correct it. That is also grammaticality. Grammaticality judgment gives some ungrammatical and some grammatical sentences. You mix it up and they have to judge which are grammatical, which are ungrammatical. There is a lot of data from Telugu in your e-text. So consult the module, this module e-text for more information. But I will show you the data, the actual data that I collected from Telugu children in 1994. I made the children into 4 groups. First group is average is, each group has 12 children. First group is 4.8 average years, 4 years, 8 months. Second group is 5 years, 10 months. Third group is 7 years, 8 days. Last group is 8 years, almost 9 years. 23 days or something like that. So I made up 50 sentences. I asked them, does it sound silly or it sounds okay? If it sounds silly, put it mark like this, I had the sentences printed, I also spoke the sentences, and if they said no, this is not correct, I wrote down the thing. Then if they say it is not correct, I told them, please make it correct for me. So sentence correction score is there, sentence acceptability score is there. If you look at this table carefully, what do you observe? The 3 things you have to notice. One is the scores on sentence correction are much higher than sentence acceptability. If I give a wrong sentence, they are able to make it right quickly and they got more scores out of it. But sentence acceptability, they are not able to, especially the younger ones, they are not able to do it very well. That is one point. And second point is, see the gradual increase in performance from group 2 to group 3. In fact, I colored it differently. There is a jump in performance. That is, when between 5 years and 7 years, by the time they became 7 years, they performed very well. Alright, and this is consistently shown across different languages, European, all languages. Children develop metalinguistic awareness, especially sentence awareness, by the time they are about 7 years old. Why? Why is this? Why is 7-year-olds very good in metalinguistic awareness? The first thing that should come to your mind is, by 7, all of them would have gone to school. So, literacy plays an important role in enhancing your metalinguistic awareness, because 7-year-olds have already gone to school. The teachers are putting words on the board, they are making them do exercises involving words and sentences, correcting their sentences, so their metalinguistic awareness gets enhanced at around the age of 7. Ability to correct incorrect sentences is also improved quite a bit than making judgment of acceptability. See, this judgment of acceptability is very difficult for 3 and 4-year-old children, because they only pay attention to the content of the sentence, not to the form. They think if a sentence is in their world, if a sentence is saying something which is untrue, they will say it is wrong, even though the sentence's structure is correct. I'll try to give you an example from my own research. I asked a child in Vijayawada, a small 4-year-old child, I said, listen to this sentence and tell me if it is silly or if it's okay or it's not correct. So I said, the Telugu sentence was, Amma roju chapatilu chestundi. That is, mother makes chapati every day. That 4-year-old child's mother never makes chapatis. They eat rice all the time. So the child said it's a wrong sentence. The child is not able to say Amma Roju Chapatili Chestundi is a perfectly grammatical sentence. 4-year-old could not say, but 5, 6, 7-year-olds could say it. So this is what I am trying to say. They are not able to, they cannot dissociate content from form. The moment you are able to dissociate meaning from form, you have metalinguistic ability. So there is a jump between 4 years and 8 years in the metalinguistic ability. But you might now want to know, why do we have to do this? Why do we have to test metalinguistic awareness? We need to test because a lot of research evidence is available to show that metalinguistic awareness in primary school children can predict their ability to read well later on, whether they can read well later on. That's very important to know. If your metalinguistic awareness is very poor in primary school, we may as well work and improve it so that you become a good reader and writer. That's why we need to know about metalinguistic awareness. With reference to English, many tests have been developed for testing metalinguistic awareness. In fact, the government, the American government, makes this test material available to school teachers. It's all available on the net. They can download the test, give it to the children, and if the children don't do well, give them special instruction in reading and writing. But they are not yet available in many of the Indian languages, and you need to work on that. So let's look at a couple of tests in English that are readily available. In this test called relatives test, examiner provides a base word. The child has to use that word to complete an incomplete sentence. So suppose the examiner says run and tells the child, every morning my brother dash. What is your answer? You have to say runs, right? Every morning. So the correct answer is runs. That is, you are testing the child's ability to inflect. The inflection, and you can do this with derivation also. So it's a morphological awareness test. An affix identification task. In this, series of pseudo words are given. Pseudo word means it's not a word in English. They are presented in writing. The child's task is to circle, take a red pen and circle all the add-ons, the additionals. What is the root word? What is the affix? They have to identify. So if they see likes, they have to circle S, because S is the added on, right? If they see running, they have to circle ing. Ing is added to run, right? So this is a affix identification task. Okay, so if you not sure about what I am saying, try and do this task for me. Try to identify the odd one based on meaning. Cow, cat, cup, dog. What is the odd one out? Right? Think about it. Meaning, I am saying meaning, don't pay attention to sound, meaning. Next, spade, biscuit, bricks, bell. What is the odd one out? Think about meaning. Next task is, now you pay attention to sound, not meaning. Which one is odd? Dog, duck, door, pig. One more. Pay attention. Sound. Now you have to remove the odd one based on sound. Moon, sun, saw, star. Okay. Now for answers, you consult your e-text. I will not give you the answers. There, you will find them there. Alright. Now metalinguistic awareness is also important, and it's connected to bilingualism. So let me say a few things about bilingualism and metalinguistic awareness. In our country, children grow up learning and using more than 2 languages, right? Most of the time we learn 2 or more languages and we use them. So we are forced to reflect on the structure. So this is particularly true, and this is really true of tribal children. Why is it? Tribal children, they use their tribal language at home. The moment at the age of 4, those few children who are going to school, they have to learn. Every school textbook is not in their tribal language. It is in the mainstream language. So they are forced to, at a very early age, they have to think about the non-tribal language and tribal language all the time. They have to shift between the home language and the school language. Researchers have shown that if tribal children who are dealing with two languages all the time, right from the age of 3 or 4, have better metalinguistic ability than non-tribal monolingual children. I would like to quote one research by Ajit Mohanty. He has done on Kui and Oriya, Kond and Oriya children. They are bilinguals, 6 to 16-year-olds. He compared their performance on certain tests that he developed in these languages with monolingual Oriya children. You can be a child, a Oriya child in Assam. Oriya is spoken by all the non-tribals. All the books are in Oriya. But when the tribal children come, Kond children and Koya children come, they are forced to learn Oriya. So they are bilinguals, right? So Ajit Mohanty, he's a psycholinguist. He's done some tests involving analytical orientation, cognitive flexibility. In all the tests that he developed, the bilingual children did much better than monolingual children. So basically, all these facilitate the cognitive abilities, facilitate metalinguistic and metacognitive processes, and also executive functioning and memory. So these children, for instance, if you are playing with them and say, in this game, point to a chair and say, I'm going to call this a table. You just change the names, all right? Monolingual children get very confused. They can't play the game. But the bilingual children could play along the game of changing the names of reference arbitrarily. So let me now conclude what I've been saying, the main points. Metalinguistic awareness develops gradually only after one learns to speak and understand their native language. That's the main point. Linguistic representations based on spoken language, they get altered, enriched, redescribed once children go to school. So it's not anymore a sound-based representation staying in your mind by itself. It gets altered the moment you go to school. Literacy instruction forces children to treat language as though it's an object on which they can reflect upon. Awareness about sound properties, which is what is called phonological awareness, or words, morphological awareness, or sentences, syntactic awareness. These are all language specific and they develop gradually throughout school years. I said primary school, but in fact some of them develop even middle school and all that. Most tests based on English language will not work for testing metalinguistic awareness in Indian languages. Bilingual children exhibit much enhanced metalinguistic awareness than monolingual children because they are more flexible cognitively. They can accept arbitrariness about language much better, and their memory is much better. They are able to focus much better. So bilingualism does have an enhanced metalinguistic skills. That's it. Thank you.